Welcome back to Worst Season House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from the villa that is the...
It's the Aquarius Home Studio studio,
Yep.
but it's in Shoreview tonight.
Yep, it's in Shoreview. You were back from Arizona and Vegas. You remembered Valentine's Day. I walked into a bunch of roses.
I actually was a preemptive Valentine's Day guy. I actually celebrated Valentine's Day with Margot before I left on the trip because I knew that I was going to be gone. So we went out and had dinner. I got her a Valentine's card, a Valentine's gift.
That's why you're husband of the year.
Husband of the year, 9 of the last 11 years. I think it's going to be tough this year, but January didn't go too well for me. So
Is that why you walked in today with a ton of alcohol and you're just feeding
February,
it to her?
right? And I had flowers to wrap up our Valentine's celebration. But no, this is actually it's a tremendous little lead-in for the podcast. It's a Cocktail of the Month Club that I got as a Christmas gift from Gianni. It's the second year. Last year was all the kids gave it to me. And I think it was just from Gianni this year, but you get 3 different drinks. You get all the mixes and the recipes to make 4 cocktails of 3 different drinks. The only thing they don't send you is the spirit, and each month it's a different spirit.
Okay.
Last month it was rye. This month it's tequila. So you go out, you buy a bottle of tequila, and then it has all the mix to make 4 each of 3 cocktails.
It looks good.
And it's terrific. And it actually has broadened our horizons with some number. That's how we got into tequila was last year. There was a tequila month, and we liked a couple of the cocktails. They've stayed in a regular repertoire of ours. But they force you to think about drinks a little differently with some of the different mixes. You maybe get out of your comfort zone with even what kind of alcohol you might drink. And like this one, the first one we're having here has a little blackberry soda in it with Blanco tequila, a rose syrup of some kind, and then some cardamom bitters.
Wow.
And lime juice. And it's really good. But another one, I think it was called like Cookies with Grandma or something, and it has chocolate in it. And so it's a variety of cocktails, but it really kind of gets you thinking about things. And I thought it would be a perfect way to lead in to have a little tequila while we talked wild hockey.
Yeah, no, that's good. Maybe I should start this to, learn how to be a bartender for my next career. That's my, people ask me all the time, what are you going to do next? And I'm like, either deal poker or be a bartender.
Well, for me, they usually talk about being a chef. I wouldn't mind. I'd love to do that, but I wouldn't mind working in the restaurant business where bartender would be one way to do it. Be a wine guy.
Be cool.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
I went behind the bar at Lake Elmo Inn like last year, and I poured my first beer. It wasn't very seamless.
Yeah, you might have to have more skills than just pouring beer.
Yeah, but even that, I was not very good. So there's just nothing that I'm good at all.
Well,
like I was just in the dentist chair, and I was like this woman that's like, she's doing the cleaning, she's like maneuvering the mirror, and I'm like, how would you could you imagine if I tried to clean somebody's teeth? Like, how do you get the
I can't imagine that you're very good at brushing your own teeth.
No, trust me, I just learned I'm not.
Guy who had to call a maintenance guy to change a light bulb.
Well, first of all, I'm definitely not good at brushing my teeth because I just got like a ton of bad news at the dentist. And you know what my problem with going to the dentist is that when they're doing the initial it's always a new hygienist, and when they're doing the initial exam and they're silent, you just know they're judging you. Like you just know that they're like, this guy doesn't floss. He hasn't flossed in 20 years. He only, maybe, brushes once a day, maybe smokes a little too much cigar, way too much coffee. Like, that this is all what's going through the mind. She's judgmental on everything. And coincidentally,
I feel like I'm talking to Larry David right now. I'm being judged by the dentist. You're about to say coincidentally, I'm going to the dentist tomorrow for the first time in 15 years. I'm embarrassed to say that, but when I called to make the appointment, the woman calls up my name and says, "Hold on, please," and then comes back. "Is it possible you haven't been here since 2009? I said, "Yeah, that's possible." And then she says, "Oh, so you must have been going somewhere else. Can you just have them, where else were you going?" I said, "Nowhere, just to my bathroom to brush my teeth a couple times a day."
Yeah.
And we'll find out.
The other thing I do before I go to the dentist is I feel like I'm cramming for an exam. Like I am like in there before going to the dentist, like just brushing every nook and cranny. I decided today to floss for the first time in like weeks, months, and just started bleeding like a faucet because so they like I feel like they want to know, when you get there.
I'm fully prepared for my mouth will be bleeding like crazy tomorrow during
I'd say 10-1 that you're not going to show up at practice tomorrow.
I'll be there.
Root canals.
Yeah, no, I'll be there. I'll be there.
Crowns, cavities.
You remember, like we've had, and we joke sometimes about Margot's diving into different kind of fitness plans, different kinds of way to eat, different ways to take care of things. At one point this summer, we were brushing our teeth with sand. It was a little jar of sand, and you dipped your toothbrush in it, and then you brushed with it, and it was sand, and it was sand, and the guy
Mara said it was granular,
right? But it was the thing on the side said the first ingredient was sand, and so we brushed our teeth with this for a while, and it was like when you ran your tongue across your teeth, they were amazingly smooth. Then we had dinner with a dentist one night, and they said, yeah, don't do that anymore. It's terrible for your teeth. So we abandoned that plan. We had these electric toothbrushes for a while that did a timer for 2 minutes, and they'd stop like every 30 seconds so you knew to move to a different quadrant of your mouth. We did that for a little while. So we've done some different ideas on dental hygiene around here, and now we're back to just using Crest and a toothbrush. So it seems like we've come back full circle.
By the way, is this like the normal procedure for when you get flowers to be doing everything you're doing, Margot? Like, what a high maintenance procedure. She's just like trimming things and spinning things and pulling out
the spinning of the flowers. And she told me a couple times how to check.
It's like Mr. Miyagi here. Check to see that the base is firm. We're told. Take off all the leaves, the dead somethings. And then spin it.
But in a store, I can't take.
But what if you get
leaves.
hit by a thorn? Oh, you take the thorns off too.
Right. So they end up with very wide open flowers. But there was something I've forgotten that I was supposed to check every time before I bought them, because I can't. Well, if that's obvious to the naked eye, then I can do that. I thought there was some other test I was supposed to do to make sure they were good. But
you guys know that she doesn't have a mic.
Right. No, I know. I was asking the question for my own personal use, but
people are either at this point going to absolutely love and find this podcast hilarious, or they're going to be like,
it'll be good.
It off.
I got to have one more tequila cocktail. I got harassed when I got home because I did have a little tequila last night after the game in Tempe. And actually, you know what? I was thinking about this on the way home because I was kind of thinking, well, we'll probably talk a little bit about the road trip. And this road trip for me had a couple examples of why I love the life of traveling on the road with an NHL hockey team.
Mm-hmm.
And because it had a little bit of, we happened to be in Vegas the day of the Super Bowl.
Right.
We landed a half hour, 40 minutes before kickoff. It was just fun to be in the city where the game was being played. I mean, it would be fun to be in Vegas on Super Bowl Sunday anytime. But this year, the game happened to be there. So there was just a buzz in the town. It's such a fun place to be, just with the energy in the city and everything. And it wasn't ideal in terms of finding places to, all the sports books were jammed and everything, but we just found a hotel bar to watch the game and went to my favorite little Italian spot, had dinner, listened to a tremendous Sinatra piano guy, and then had a great game in Vegas, well supported by Wild fans, as always. A day off in Tempe where I got to go play golf at an unbelievable country club with some guys from Ping that were down in Tempe for some Ping training stuff, but they're from Minnesota. A couple of them were from Minnesota anyway, Wild fans that wanted to go to the game, but had a full off day. Team's not practicing or anything, so I had no responsibilities whatsoever. 70 and sunny in the middle of February. I get to go play golf in Tempe. And then the game night, a fun atmosphere at Mullet Arena. I know you weren't on this trip, but you've been there before. It's just, we have the best broadcast position in the league. You feel like you are more a part of a game there than any place else that we go all season long. But it was one of the rare times where we stayed in a city after the game and flew the next morning. So it meant that the game day wasn't quite as compressed, where you have to have like all your stuff packed up, check out of your hotel, at 3:30, 3:45 when the buses are leaving. Instead, I had a leisurely day there, a chance to get outside and run, went on a little mountain hike, had time for all that. And then after the game, got to just sit, and I went out and had a few drinks with Darby Hendrickson and Wes Walls. And the opportunities to just sit there with just the three of us for a couple of hours at a little dive bar, sip a few drinks and just talk about life, about hockey, about our kids, about our families, about Darby's cold water plunge training that he does. But those were the nights that I talked with Margot before I left on this trip about the early days when I was traveling, when it was you, me, Chad Graff, Mike Greenlay. And it was just a given in every city. The four of us were going to go get dinner. We were going to go get drinks and play games afterward. We all loved the same things. We were going to have a great meal. We were going to have some great wine. And then we were just going to go play. And the nights we sat around the table and debated the most random of topics those are the nights that were my most enjoyable nights ever on the road. And I got to have that last night with these guys, just to sit there. And we talked everything from their playing days, the 2003 playoff run, what it was like with Jacques Lemaire, all the different coaches Darby has coached with the Wild. I mean, think about all the guys he's been a part of. He played for Jacques, and then he was an assistant coach on every other coach the Wild have had. He's been a part of their staff. So we were
Todd Richards too, right?
Todd Richards was the first one.
Yeah.
And so he's been a part of every single one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun just to have those kind of conversations. And obviously we talk a little bit about this year's team, and some of that can't be shared, but it was just so much fun to sit and just chat with those two guys for a long time. And so it was a trip that just kind of had a little bit of everything for me. And the golf day was just terrific. With the weather was absolutely perfect. And we played at this course called Moon Classic or Moon Valley or something like that. It used to be owned by Ping. So all the owners of Ping's families' houses are on this course. One of them has a pool shaped like a wedge that if you look at it from they showed me a satellite picture of it, and it actually looks like the head of a Ping wedge. It's pretty cool. But I've probably played 6 or 7 rounds of golf on the road in the history of my time with the Wild. It just doesn't happen very often. So when it did, it was just terrific. I played with a guy who shot 67. It was unbelievable. It was
that would be intimidating.
Yeah, it was intimidating. And I watched him swing on the range, and one of the guys I was playing with had said, "This guy's a pretty good player." I watched him swing, and I was like, "Boy, I don't know. That swing looks ugly." We got on the course. He birdied 4 of the first 5 holes. I was like, well, I am in so far over my head in this group. I haven't really swung a club. I mean, I played a little bit one day, but I haven't really played golf since October. And this guy's 4 under after 5 holes. I was like, well, on my best day, I've never been anywhere close to that. It's unbelievable. But it was a great trip.
You could tell LaPanta and I haven't talked in weeks. Other than last week's podcast, we really haven't seen each other since before I went to Cancun. When the next time we're on this podcast and we're whining about our jobs, people are going to remind us of this February 16th.
Well, and I will. I mean, I'm not ever whining about the job. I'm just saying that this was a trip that had a little bit of everything that's the best of traveling with an NHL team.
Glad I missed it.
It was, well, you've missed the Florida trip this year was fun. I know you missed all that the good too. Trips. So, you're the guy in charge. Why don't you?
I know.
Put your foot down and let's go.
I don't know if I'm in charge, but definitely try to compromise. And to be fair, I mean, the Wild have one more trip to Arizona and one more trip to Vegas, and I'm on those. All right. February 21st is our next live show. That's at Elsie's at 7 p.m. Come early, by the way. Greenbelt has an awesome promotion with the Tuttle's Restaurants, which is Elsie's on this trip. That's 7 p.m. February 21st. Have dinner. Grab a grain belt, enjoy yourself, and then Anthony and I will be showing up at 6:59 for the podcast. So that's a good one. We have a lot to talk about in the show. I was going to say before we started that we have a ton of great questions, and we'll get to them all. That it might be tough now. Just threw away some time on the pod.
There's a lot to talk about.
Let's start with Mason Shaw.
Was great.
Yeah,
there's a lot to talk about with this team right now.
Yeah, let's do that.
Going on.
But let's talk. Wild signed Mason Shaw today to a 1-year deal. Rest of the season, he'll be at practice on Friday, practicing for the first time. I'm hearing Marcus Foligno is going to miss at least a couple more weeks. Obviously, we know Pat Maroon's out They sent Adam Beckman down. They're carrying still 8 defensemen, so they can only carry 1 extra forward as long as they have 8D on this team. Chisholm hasn't even gotten into a game yet. Goligoski's been scratched. Murmis and Merrill have so far been the mainstays in the lineup and has kept Chisholm out of the lineup. And then they're going to sign Murat Huznadinov later this month. That's everything that I'm hearing. So if they're healthy, they're not going to have a ton of roster room, if at all. So it's going to be interesting. But Shaw's going to get in the lineup, Anthony, and the fact that this guy's even playing right now just says he's so easy to root for. I mean, the determination of this kid.
You have to root for him.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable, and his story is incredible, but they're not calling him up just because the story's good. They're calling him up because they think he can help the team. You mentioned Foligno, and we haven't really gotten any confirmation on it. In fact, I asked Hines yesterday what he had heard about it, and the only reason I even was asking was because I was just curious if he would handle his lineup differently if he knew that it was a longer-term injury. A lot of times, if you know that you're just missing a guy for a couple games, you don't want to disrupt everything else, so you just throw a space filler into that spot. But if you think, hey, this might be 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever, a month, now you might handle it a little differently. And he at that time didn't really know, and I actually, there are times, as you know, when the coach tells you I don't know, and
they know.
You know they know. In this case, I really don't know if he did, because when we left, they didn't really have definitive answers yet as to what the severity was. But what Shaw brings is a guy that could slide into a spot like that, can help you as a penalty kill guy. Brandon Duhaime was fine there the other night, but I didn't really think that line was very good. I thought the other 3 lines for the Wild, I thought were all much better in 100%. Arizona than the Gaudreau, Hartman, and Duhaime line. Shaw's proven to be a valuable penalty killer. He's proven to be a guy that everybody in the room likes and respects. And if now all of a sudden you say, okay, well, if Foligno's going to be gone for a while, you got a spot in the bottom 6 that, as good as that 4th line has been with Dewar, Lucchini, and Lettieri, you got another guy here who has proven that he can help you in those spots. And as I mentioned, the penalty kill, where he was such a big part of a very improved kill last year. This is not just a charity thing. This is a guy that can help the team.
Yeah. I'm going to be interested to see what happens with Huznadinov and how quickly they can get him over here. When they sign him, they theoretically, especially if they're working out the work visa and everything, they could put him on Iowa's roster just for the time being. And then if you remember, once you get to March 8th, which is the trade deadline, then you can go over 23 men on your roster. You just got to be cap compliant. So maybe we don't even if they sign Huznadinov later this month, maybe we don't even see him in the NHL.
Yeah, you're only talking about probably the difference of 4 or 5 days in all likelihood.
But they are getting to that point here where you got to wonder how long they're going to be able to or will carry 8 defensemen if they're going to have to make a move, whether it's putting Chisholm back on waivers or John Merrill on waivers or Dakota Murmis on waivers.
They want to. I think they have some intrigue in Chisholm.
Yeah,
and they like his skating ability, his puck moving ability. They see him as potentially a power play type guy. And I don't think that they'd be anxious to throw him back on waivers and risk losing him. Even though he hasn't played yet, right?
And they would lose.
They would for sure. And even though
so it's got to be Merrill and Murmis if they're going to go below 8.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that, I don't know that either one of those guys would be a risk to be claimed.
Yeah,
they've been fine with the Wild. They've been good, but I don't really think there are teams out there that would. I guess I haven't looked at the other rosters closely enough, but I would guess they'd have a chance to clear waivers, and they don't want to lose any of those guys. I think when you start to look at the defensive core, I think they're excited about the addition of Chisholm. I think he has some upside, just needs an opportunity. But those other guys have really filled in well. And I was talking with Wes a little bit about this, that when Beckman arrived, that it perhaps ignited a little fire under a 4th line. That hey, now there's an extra guy here, and I don't know that Chisholm didn't have the same impact on the defensive core, where all of a sudden you got some guys who are just in the lineup every night. And now you got another guy sitting here that, well, if I don't pick it up a little bit, I'm going to be in the press box for a week.
100%. Totally agree with you. I think it's a great point because I didn't love their game completely yesterday, Merrill and Murmas. They both had some tough moments, some good moments.
They didn't play much down the stretch.
And no, but I thought they were both very good against Vegas and Pittsburgh.
They were great against Vegas.
And I thought they were the best pair in Chicago. So I don't disagree with you. I think that those guys read the tea leaves. I mean, they know, Goligoski can't go anywhere. So it's got to be one of those two. And I totally agree with it. Feeling overwhelmed by a growing to-do list and a shrinking schedule? Spending more time stressing over household repairs and enjoying life? Well, you're not alone, and Aquarius Home Services has your back. They are your trusted local let us tackle your to-do list team. Aquarius Home Services is here to assist. Whether it's your furnace, electrical work, or plumbing giving you trouble, you choose the service and they will handle the fix and take $98 off the repair cost. That's right. For any furnace, plumbing, or electrical repair, they're slashing $98 right from the price. Watch your to-do list shrink while you reclaim your time. No more worrying about flickering lights, leaky toilets, or noisy furnaces. Their dedicated professionals respect your home and your time. Aquarius believes in earning the right to be recommended. They're just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com. And don't forget to mention Russo sent you.
Royal Credit Union's smart checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Make the switch to a Royal checking account and you'll also get real-time transaction alerts, free mobile check deposits, and surcharge-free access to over 40,000 ATMs across the U.S. Enjoy financial freedom with no minimum balance and no monthly fees when you switch to Royal's smart checking account. Learn more and open your Royal Credit Union smart checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Whenever I want to look like a non-slob, I wear twill. So Saturday night, I'm at Head Flyer. Everything I was wearing, I got at twill in the Edina Galleria. Sunday night, Timberwolves game. Once again, decided to go into non-slob mode. Everything I wore, I got at twill. Stenstrom dress shirts, beautiful Italian sport coat, Brax slacks, really nice belt, everything. I won't go any farther, but pretty much everything I wore, including my hat that's kind of like a dress hat that also has ear flaps that fold down for the Minnesota winter. I mean, everything I got at Twill. So I recommend you going to Twill and finding what works for you. TwillMN.com, Twill in the Edina Galleria.
But how ironic is it, Anthony, that Chisholm comes here and he might go back to Winnipeg and not even play a game yet when we go there next week? I mean, right now, I can't imagine he's playing against Buffalo. Can you?
I think if I can read the way Hines handles this stuff, and we don't know him as well yet as we've known the previous coaches, he seems to be a guy that we're going well, we're winning, I'm not going to disrupt. And so because of that, I think it's unlikely he makes a change into Buffalo. I also think Murmas and Merrill had played well enough against Pittsburgh and Vegas that even though they had a little bit of an off night against Arizona, that they've got a little bit of rope left.
Yeah.
Now, even in a win, if they weren't great against Buffalo and the team won, then I could see him making a change. I gotta believe he goes with the same group.
Yeah.
One more game.
It's just, this is a tough situation for Chisholm because this guy hasn't played in months, and now you're going to throw him into a lineup that is now suddenly trying to make the playoffs. It just, it's really crazy just how it's all come about here. Where now it's really hard to get him into the lineup because he might not want to really disrupt things. And you're not disrupting the forwards at all. You can't, even Shaw, I can't imagine it's going to play until there's an injury because that fourth line of Lucchini and Letarian and Dury not changing.
Yeah.
And they're not taking, unless you're sitting and taking out Freddie Goudreau at some point.
And that was what I was just going to say is it's probably a bigger statement, but I thought the Wild's worst line the other night was the Hartman, Goudreau, Duhaime line. Those are three guys who you certainly would say have earned more, have more credibility, have a little bit longer leash than the fourth line guys because of their tenure and stature in the league. But I thought those guys struggled, and you could tell. That's why Hines was playing that fourth line like crazy. He talked about it after the Pittsburgh game, how good they were. He leaned on them in Vegas. But I thought it was significant the number of times they wound up on the ice against the Keller-Schmaltz line for Arizona, and Hines didn't care. I'll play those guys against their best line. And it was a 1 versus 4 matchup. I bet 4 or 5 times late second, early third when the game was in the balance, and he had no problem playing those guys against him.
Yeah, I just don't know when you send Goudreau a message at some point. Like, this is just unacceptable. This has gone on the entire season. He's just MIA. Yeah, their penalty kill is going well, and he's now suddenly a part of it. But my lord, I mean, this is crazy how invisible he is. And at some point, you just got to hit him in the pride. As much as this guy cares, as good of a guy he is, as much as he works hard, like at some point, you got to just send him upstairs and send him a little message here. And because again,
I'm curious. There's sometimes where guys aren't playing well, and a message is what's needed. There are other times where it's not effort; it's just a guy that's in a slump. And with him, I think it's more the latter, a guy that's just in a slump.
82-game slump.
Right? No, I agree. But I don't think it's. Yeah. You don't look at him and say, "Well, he's not prepared to play. He's not out of shape. He's not." It isn't lack of effort. He hasn't been able to make a play all year. And
it's like Ryan Reeves took the Freddie Goudreau we knew and turned him into well,
we can talk more about that in a minute. But because the other thing, that was actually one of the other things I talked a lot on this trip when I spent some time with Wes, and we were looking at where the team's headed, the roster and everything, and Goudreau's name came up, and we both agreed that I still believe his contract is a valid contract for a guy with his skill set. And if you're paying $2 million for a fourth line center that can kill penalties, that even if it's that and a shootout specialist, because he was really effective in shootouts, and those points are huge in the standings. This year, they just haven't been in very many shootouts, so we haven't seen it as much. But for $2 million for that guy on your fourth line, that's terrific. The problem is here he's playing in a more significant role. He's been a third line guy, even a top six guy from time to time this year, and just hasn't produced at that level. But as you move forward, I don't think there's anything wrong with the contract they signed him. And if he ends up being a fourth line guy that gives you 18 or 20 points a season and plays on the penalty kill, it's worth $2 million.
Yeah. And he gets you some shootout goals.
Right. But this year they just needed more like what they got last year from him, and they just haven't gotten it.
Because I thought Goudreau had a good camp, and then all of a sudden he breaks his ribs on game 2 of the season, and he's just like MIA the rest of the year. So I guess it's the only play Ryan Reeves has made that has been good this year for from his standpoint.
How about, did you see
my
that?
God, is he like?
Well,
I've never seen somebody that's so maligned in a market.
But he's been exactly what I thought he was here. What I think both of us thought he was here, which was an overrated, exaggerated role player. And I thought the Wild were better off for sure at the price when Toronto signed him. And we both predicted that it wasn't going to be long into this season that the people up there would see the same thing. And I all this stuff with the Morgan Riley hit the other night that, this stuff was never supposed to happen. Now that Ryan Reeves was here, like everybody was going to fear him. He was going to. How about, did you see the video of that hit that Nathan Walker?
Yeah, and he's like 5'8".
Right.
And he just put him on his butt.
Threw him on the ice, and
make hockey violent again. Well, that's not a smart saying by him.
And the fact that he came out and said things like, "Well, when I came in the league, if Ridley Gregg had done that, well, you're in the league now.
Yeah.
Why aren't you the guy sending the message to Ridley Gregg?
Yeah, because he's not on the ice.
Right.
But the other thing, the when I played in the league, like he came into the league in 2011. Like it's not like he didn't play in the 1980s and 90s. Like, I mean, it's just not. Sometimes he just talks a little too much. And when you're covering him as a beat writer, you love it. But like then when you're away from it and you hear it, you just don't agree with it. By the way, one thing I did want to ask when you were talking about the Super Bowl, when you got off that plane at Signature in Vegas, what was it like? Was there had to be like
unbelievable number of planes sitting there. So our plane couldn't even stay there.
It had to go to L.A.
It had to, it was at L.A. or Palm Springs or so. They flew somewhere.
Yeah.
And we actually had a long delay. They had some kind of issue with the plane coming back, so we ended up on a different plane going to Phoenix. We had a long delay on that travel night. Luckily, the next day was an off day, so it didn't really matter. But it was some ungodly fee you had to pay to leave your plane there. Yeah. And I did see a little video the next day of the flight trackers with all the charters leaving, 550 of them or something left the next day.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable to look on that. I mean, you know what that runway looks like, and all these little private jets all parked there was.
And one probably belonging to one famous person over another. It's pretty neat.
It was crazy, the celebrity presence that was in Vegas that night. And I'm not a huge celebrity type guy, like, oh, he was here, she was here, whatever. But when you hear everybody talking about it in town, it was kind of cool to be there. It was just fun to be in that town with that kind of energy. We've been out there before on first
March
weekend of the NCAA tournament. We were out there on Sweet 16 weekend one time. We were there on Conference Championship weekend in the NFL one time. So we've been out there coincidentally with the Wild when there have been major sporting events going on elsewhere. But for this one to actually have the game be there in Vegas was
well, I've
cool.
been in Vegas a couple times on Super Bowl Sunday, but never obviously when it was in Vegas. And even then, when it's not there, it's a zoo. What was the hotel like, by the way? Because the Wild, I don't know if people remember my podcast earlier this season with Andrew Height, but it was really fascinating. He couldn't get a hotel room for the team because everybody needed 3-day, 4-day minimums. It was just crazy amount of prices. So finally, the NFL donated. I mean, the Wild had to pay for them, but gave the Wild 40 hotel rooms from their hotel there, because otherwise the Wild literally would have either had to fly in on game day or stay in another city and fly in. So like maybe stay in LA or Palm Springs and fly in on the day of the game. But then the NFL came to the Wild's rescue. But was it weird being off the Strip a little bit, and no casino?
It was only a block off the Strip, although in Vegas blocks are big.
Yeah.
And the hotel was fine. There was nothing special, but I'm glad that we were down in that neighborhood and not out of town somewhere.
Yeah,
for sure. And I didn't realize the NFL had been the ones that had helped them, but it was our hotel had to have been where a lot of the CBS people were housed, because a bunch of the meeting rooms were like CBS meeting rooms. So that was kind of cool to be around that kind of energy. And you had the big CBS set right in front of the Bellagio fountains. That was it was kind of cool to watch them taking that apart the next day. And so all those things were just kind of fun to see. But it did make for we usually stay at the Bellagio. I love that place. I love being right there. I don't think we're staying there on the next trip either, but it was fun just to at least be in the Strip area, even though we were a block off.
So we talked about the fourth line. Let's talk about the first line, the new fourth line. That it's not totally brand new. We've seen John Hines actually use this line before after he first got here, and he separated Kaprizov and Zuccarello. I think you and I, our last podcast was after the Chicago win, and we talked about how John Hines was not happy after that win and threw some shade at the top two lines. Really between the lines, talking about guys like Zuccarello and Boldy, and not so much Kaprizov, but definitely that was part of it. And then we show up to practice the next day, and Zuccarello and Kaprizov are separated, and we have a new first line with Eriksson Ek and Boldy. And my Lord, has Matt Boldy come alive here? Not that he wasn't alive before, but he is playing his best hockey since last March. And Eriksson Ek's just being Eriksson Ek, and Kaprizov, the three, their chemistry right now is off the chain.
I don't know if you were watching our broadcast last night or not, but they had I mentioned that if you look at all the lines in the NHL who had played at least 130 minutes going into last night, because those guys I think had played 132 or 135 together, there's only one line in the NHL that has more goals per 60 minutes than those guys. And they've just been magic. It's been their attempts and their chances for are all up in the 75-78% range these last few games. They've been absolutely dominant. Arizona had no answer for them. Vegas really didn't have an answer for them. Pittsburgh had no answer for them. They've just controlled games. And the number of attempts and shots that they get, I think last night between the three of them, they had 25 attempts and 15 shots or something like that. Kaprizov had 8 shots on goal. They were controlling the games the way that we saw Kaprizov control games so often earlier in his career, that we've been waiting. When is it going to be that shift where he's circling with the puck in the offensive zone? And we haven't seen that, but we've seen it from their line where they look like they're on a power play their entire shift on the ice.
I thought yesterday was one of his best games of the season. I know he didn't score every second last night, but even just, again, as you were just saying, coming up the ice with a presence is that was the Kaprizov that I think that we've all come to expect. And I think that's, I just was talking to Barrera about this. A lot of the fans that have wanted this team to quote unquote tank for a top pick. This team's incapable of tanking when you have players this good.
Right.
I mean, you can't make Eriksson Ek and Faber and Kaprizov and Boldy and Zuccarello and Foligno and these guys, guys with pride like Fleury and Gus. You can't make them play like Anaheim and San Jose and Chicago.
No,
there are guys. I mean, look at those rosters. There are guys on those teams I've never even heard of.
You know that I always will argue against the people who say, oh, you have to bottom out, you have to tank, you have to lose, you have to get a top. You don't. What the Wild have been able to do has been amazing in the fact they've stayed competitive for these last 12 years, turned over almost the entire roster, and yet have been competitive. I understand they haven't made a run to a cup final, but over the last 11 years, the Wild and the Penguins are the only two teams that have been in the playoffs 10 times. That is something, and it's because of the talent level on this roster, the talent level on this team. They're better than the other teams right now that are on the bubble in the West. I don't know if they'll be able to overtake all of them and wind up in the postseason, but there is no way you walk into that room and say to guys, hey, we'd be better off losing games. It's absurd. And they are so different. Even look at Arizona. They've been talking earlier this year. I remember when, well, I don't have to throw Gorgie under the bus, but earlier in the year, Arizona was winning some games, and he's like, oh, yeah, I mean, the Coyotes are better than us. I'm like, they are not. They're just not. They're not even close. And so when we were going to the game the other night, and I said, look, this has been like their magical year. They've got one goalie's got 5 shutouts. They've just been stealing games. They won 5 in a row against the last 5 Cup champs. The Wild have been upside down all year, fired a coach, had 7 guys out of the lineup for 2 weeks. They still have more points than the Coyotes. They're just different. They're at a totally different level than that franchise right now. They're at a different level than the Ducks, than the Sharks, than the Hawks, all these teams. I mean, it's just, this team is one of the best 8 teams in the West. It's just a matter of if they can make up.
If they can overcome the first 19 games and the 7 that happened in the middle of this streak. I totally agree.
And if you look at I was talking, we talked about this last night too. If you look at their season, the last 9 games under Evason when they had the losing streak, then they go 11-3 with Hines, then they start losing guys and they go 1-7-1. And if you look at the guys that were out during that 1-7-1 stretch, it wasn't 1-7-1 with your A team. It was 1-7-1. About 5 of those nights, you had no chance with the roster you were running out. And now since then, they're 8-3. So which team's real? If you even just look at the Hines era, 11-3, 1-7-1 when you were crippled, 8-3. Is it really realistic to look and say they're a 19-6 club if they've got all their guys healthy? Maybe not, but it's for sure more accurate than saying that their overall mark is what it is, because that 1-7-1 stretch, yes, they didn't play well, they didn't get great goaltending, but they were fielding a team that was $50 million under the cap for most of those games. Mm-hmm. Nobody wins in that spot.
Yeah. And we were all talking about like Kaprizov and Foligno and Zuccarello and Brodin and Spurgeon and Gustafsson being out of the lineup. We all discounted the Vinny Lettieri factor, and that's clearly, look at that. They were 11-3 with Lettieri in the lineup. He goes out, they go in the tank. He comes back, they've won 4 in a row since. I will go to my grave saying that Vinny Lettieri was the biggest injury.
You'll appreciate this. We have 2 little tangential stories on Lettieri. One is that tomorrow night we're going to be trying we're going to make lamb chops here. I got the recipe from Tino. He was the one, Tino Lettieri, Vinny's father. He was the one who put the recipe into Louis' restaurant, Tavern 23. We had them there one day, and they were awesome. And I had made the comment when we were up at Louis' cabin this summer. I was like, I want to get that lamb chop recipe. And very quickly, Louis' daughter-in-law was like, that's not Louis' recipe. That's Tino's recipe. You get it from Tino. Well, Tino sent it to me, so we're going to try that tomorrow night. The other thing is, as we were doing the game last night, something came up in the broadcast. Lettieri's name came up somehow, and Wes Walls made mention of you had sent me the tweet of Louis' hole-in-one.
Right.
And Wes had seen it too, so he mentions it. And I said, well, I'll guarantee you, wherever he is right now, he's watching this game, critiquing every shift. I got a text from him 15 seconds later saying, You're right. I am watching.
No, actually, so here's what happened. You guys were telling this story. All of a sudden, you show a guy on the glass wearing a Lou Nanne jersey. I call Lou up in Florida because he does not live in Minnesota. I call up Louie in Florida and I say, did you plant that Lou Nanne jersey in this crowd? He's like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, oh, I missed it. I'll rewind. And then that's when he texted you.
Well, yeah. So not the Nanny jersey, but it was when we were talking about Letary. And I had just said, I'll guarantee you he's watching the game critiquing every shift from number 10. And he texted me like instantaneously and was like, you got that right. And
by the way, so a couple of weeks ago, I went to Tavern 23 with Lou Nanne, or it was our like weekly when he's in town or date. We go to Tavern 23. And for the first time ever, I got the steak there. It's phenomenal. Like they're like gridiron steak or flat iron steak or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I had their flat iron steak there for lunch.
Absolutely unreal. But so then we're going. Then we decided to go take a trip down to smoke some cigars, which my dentist pointed out today. And on the way there, we called Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick up. We had like a little conference call. It was one of the funniest conversations you've ever heard of Lou Nanne talking to this guy. It was like, I mean, and Jeff Merrick, if you know Jeff Merrick at all, like Lou Nanne's his hero. So it's always a cool little moment when they talk.
Was he telling him that he thought Letary should be making $2 million somewhere?
Yep,
playing on the top six,
second line, first power play. To your point before we got on this tangent about the teams they're going with, like you pointed out yesterday on the broadcast twice, once during the pregame show and once during the broadcast, on a chart that you put together about how favorable their schedule is coming up. And we've talked about this ad nauseum really the last month. If you look at the teams that they are fighting with right now, like every team around them, they are better than. Right. Arizona, Seattle, Calgary. And here's the thing with Calgary. They're probably going to trade Tanev and Hanifin. Arizona's going to trade everybody. Seattle's probably trading guys. Nashville's one team that I still think is going to get back into the playoffs. But LA's in the tank. St. Louis, like if the Wild can just take care of business in these games and stay healthy, they really do have a shot.
They're better than these teams, but they have to play significantly better because of the early season struggles. And so it's still probably a less than 50-50 bet if you were actually getting odds to whether or not they make it into the playoffs. But they're better than those teams. And we took a look at it. The 2 days, the Monday and Tuesday, couldn't have possibly gone any better for the Wild. Seattle went 1-1. Every other team that was on the bubble lost. And the Wild had a win in Vegas and then followed it up with a win in Arizona. So the Wild went 2-0. The rest of the contenders were 1-6 over a 3-day stretch. Then you look at the Wild's schedule, and the next 15, they got 9 against non-playoff teams. Even in the last 15, where they play 9 against teams currently holding playoff spots, 4 of them are against the Blues and Kings, who are the 2 wild card teams. So you've got a chance right there to make up the ground you're behind. And of the 6 against non-playoff teams, 5 of them are against the bottom 5 teams in the league: Anaheim, San Jose, Ottawa, Chicago.
Right.
So they have opportunities.
Blues look like they're playing really well right now. 7 of 10. Kings are just in the crump. I mean, every team around them is actually. I mean, Calgary's been 500. We know that obviously Anaheim or Arizona's lost 7 in a row now. Seattle's lost 7 of 10. So I mean, the Wild definitely have a chance here. As you know by now, I'm a big fan and proponent of Livea Weight Control Centers because I'm also a client. Well, I've got some big news. Livea, the trusted leader in weight loss, is now offering breakthrough weight loss medications in their center locations. In fact, I was down at the Roseville location last week, and I met with Dan, Marie, and Amanda to get info for myself, and they were so excited with the number of people coming in for their consultations to see if the medical weight loss program would be the right thing for them to complement the work they're doing on the nutrition side of their journey. Well, Livea's new medical weight loss program offers GLP-1 medications that will support you in overcoming those biological barriers that can make losing weight so difficult. Trust me, I know, with my early mornings, my late nights, my endless number of flights, It is absolutely hard. Well, with this medication, you can eliminate the food noise and experience accelerated weight loss and decreased appetite, and you get all that alongside award-winning expert nutrition and personalized one-on-one support that you've come to know from Livia Weight Control Centers. I've been with Livia for 6 weeks, have lost close to 20 pounds, and already feel better in so many ways, thanks to the expert nutritional guidance and personalized one-on-one support that I was just talking about that I get weekly from Livia. Visit Livia.com, that's LIVEA.com, or call 855-GO-LIVIA and find out more about their groundbreaking medical weight loss option. And if you're interested in the nutritional side only, well, good news. If you join Livia today, you'll get your first 3 months free. Be sure to mention my name, Russo, when you call in or fill out the form on the website, and the fine folks at Livia will get you all set up. Start your weight loss journey the Livia way.
Hey, everyone. Attorney Jerry Bosch here with Bosch Law Firm and WorkCompExperts.com. For almost 30 years, we've represented Minnesotans just like you all over the great state of Minnesota to guarantee they've been treated fairly and with respect when they've suffered a work-related injury. A work injury can change your life in an instant. You need someone on your side who can help you focus on getting back on your feet and getting paid while you do. You may be entitled to medical benefits, wage loss benefits, job placement, retraining, and payment for permanent disability. To make sure you are being paid all the work comp benefits you're entitled to, please call the attorneys at Bosch Law Firm. The call is always free, and there's never a fee unless we recover benefits on your behalf. Call 651-333-8300, Bosch Law Firm, or visit us at WorkCompExperts.com.
Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. February 21st is our next live show. That is at 7 p.m. at Elsie's. That will be a very fun show because it'll be the day after we're both in Winnipeg for that game, and we know that game. Would you expect fireworks for that game? I mean, or do you think it's going to be one of those where it's like, all right, it's, sometimes you hype it up and nothing happens.
Yeah.
But remember the last time they played, you had the whole Hartman Perfetti nonsense that happened
I think
on
depends,
the ice, and then Perfetti let everybody know about it. And
I think it depends on who's in the lineup for the Wild. If Marcus Foligno's back,
he won't.
And that becomes a different atmosphere for sure in that game. It's a very important game for Minnesota, so I think I'd say that it's probably unlikely that there's.
And Winnipeg's not playing well right now.
No, they're not.
I mean, they won last night, 1-0 against San Jose, but they are not scoring goals right now. So they haven't been playing well. So all right, let's get some Twitter questions because we have a ton of really good ones here. Rock NHL goes, do you think Faber is starting to become the face of the franchise over 97? That's probably a little too much right now. I think Kaprizov is still going to be your most popular player, but my God, Anthony, Brock Faber. I mean,
he's been terrific.
It's just, as you said yesterday, or maybe during the Vegas game, it's like every step of the way we're like, all right, yeah, but he hasn't played this many games, or there's always like this next threshold. There's always this next threshold where you're like, all right, is Faber going to hit that rookie wall? And he just doesn't do it. How about that first period yesterday? We're on the PK, he's just blocking shots and killing forechecks, and
he's been great. And been so good on the power play. And when you
it's good to have a team that has multiple faces, not just
And I think we talked about this a couple shows ago. What's different about this young core for the Wild is you're talking about guys who look like they could be stars, not just good players. Kaprizov, Boldy, Faber, Rossi. They look like they could be stars when they hit their prime, not just really good NHL players. And I think Faber is, it was interesting last night to watch as they're going head-to-head against the guy he replaced in the lineup in Matt Dumba. And the Wild miss some of what Dumba brought. They miss his leadership. They miss his energy. The team doesn't have the same kind of swagger that they had when he was a part of it. But on the ice, they're so much better.
He could have had like 9 penalties yesterday.
He could have. And
how about the most blatant one where he just almost took the eyes out of Joel Eriksson Ek? It's just somehow missed by Kevin Pollock.
Right. And that was right after they missed the trip on Rossi. It was, but Matt Dumba, 6 points and a -10. Brock Faber, 34 points and a +12 or +9 or whatever he was last night. When you just look at it that way and you think, you're just not comparing apples to apples. He's a better all-around player right now, and the Wild are so much better off with him on the ice.
And how quickly his offense has evolved has been something to be seen. Sometimes it's like somebody asked me, one of the Twitter questions that I have written here is do you think with the Wild struggling defensively, do they miss Kalen Addison? And first, I would actually debate whether or not they're struggling defensively. Their PK has sucked all year. It's been good lately, but it has sucked all year. But 5-on-5, their defense has been good. And Zach Bogosian is 20 times better of a defender than Kalen Addison.
Been great. Did you see the stat we showed last night? For the season, 5-on-5 expected goals against.
Yeah, it's
number 2.
Yeah, that's
Florida's the only team that's better. What's been different about this team defensively is they haven't gotten the goaltending they got last year. Same 2 guys. Last year they were 3rd in the league in save percentage. This year, most of the year, they've been in the bottom 3. Right now, I think they're 25th or 26th in save percentage. They're giving up fewer chances than anybody with a defensive core that's been without Spurgeon for a big chunk of the year without Brodin, and yet they still have maintained that defensively. They're not missing Kalen Addison on this defense.
And Bogosian has been so good. Like if before the trade deadline he would take a 2-year deal at a less than $1 million, I bet you the Wild would actually extend him.
I'd sign him for 2 years.
He's just got this presence about him. First of all, he looks like a gladiator.
But you know what's funny about him is I don't think people realize he's only 33 years old.
Right.
This is not a 39-year-old guy. He just stared playing when he was so incredibly young.
And he actually skates very well going forward. Sometimes, I mean, like most big guys, if a Clayton Keller's coming at him one-on-one, he's probably getting beat. But he has been good. There are times where, when you play 25 shifts a night, you're going to have some tough moments. And but for the most part, Bogosian has done his job here.
Imagine if this defensive core has its top 4 intact next year. And you're talking about Zach Bogosian as being your 5 or 6 defenseman, a right shot guy, a big physical guy. And if you're only asking him to play 12, 14, 15 minutes a night, sign me up. I'll take that guy. And I have no idea what he's thinking or what he might have for options. But if he's $1 million a year, 3rd pair defenseman, I'd take him.
Watch the blue line next year. It's going to wind up being like Middleton, Faber, Brodin, Spurgeon, Chisholm, Bogosian, and like Mermis or something. Like Mermis is handy. I'd re-sign him.
If Mermis is your 6'7" guy,
it'd be nice if these
Damon Hunt maybe is now your 6 or 7
that's the thing. Like
guy.
At some point we have to like in a week or so we're going to find out where the Wild are in the Athletics prospect pool, and they're obviously going to drop because you're graduating guys like Boldy and Rossi. Strammel over Perreault is not going to look good. But one reason why they're probably going to drop too is that so far we have not seen the much ballyhooed blue line prospects develop the way we expected in Iowa. Damon Hunt's at the top of the list, but so far Lambo, Spacek, O'Rourke, we're still waiting on that Masters, people like that. Karen Fiala asks, it's Fiala's picture with a wig, asks, when the NHLPA appeals the suspension for cross-checking another player directly in the face, is the player, obviously talking about the Riley Gregg thing and Morgan Riley, is the player that got cross-checked in the face also an NHL PM or ever like, what the F? That guy deserves suspension and you represent me too. It's such a great question. I talk about this all the time. Like it's the weirdness of a union, right? You got to protect the other guy. And when you're doing that, the other guy's got to be like, what the hell? This happened to me at the Star Tribune once in 2007 when we went into bankruptcy.
In the head?
No, but a similar thing to Karen Fiala. We were represented by a union. We had these buyouts and volunteer buyouts and all this stuff.
You want to answer your mom's phone call in the middle of the show?
No, and anyway, so we had these volunteer buyouts, and you're supposed to essentially be offered them based on seniority. Well, I was kind of like low man on the totem pole because I was only hired in 2005, but I was the hockey writer, and the Strib essentially, leapfrogged me and offered the buyout to somebody else. And so the union basically filed a grievance. And here I'm like, I give 1.8% of my salary to you, and you're filing a grievance to say that I should have been let go over this person. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's this weirdness of when you're represented by a union.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting question. I mean, and I guarantee that happens, but that's life they're in. Let's see. Big BP 55 says, given the quality of play lately and the winning streak since Maroon's injury, does it increase the likelihood that the Wild will take whatever they can for him and move him at the deadline? Also, do you feel other pieces would be moved, like Duhaime to make room for Kuznetsov? I mean, the Maroon thing is interesting. I mean, yeah, if especially because he's probably not going to be back to mid to late March. I think it probably would make sense to move him if you can get something for him and you feel like you have the pieces to fill in those spots. But remember, they also acquired Maroon because they wanted that presence in the playoffs. So maybe that's what Bill Guerin's going to look at.
Perhaps. I don't know that. It all depends on, I suppose, what some of these other guys end up to get. Is Shaw healthy and ready to go?
What
Do
their
they sign Hustadinov?
Yeah.
Where I wouldn't be surprised at all if they made some kind of a move, and even if he is still beat up, much like what the Wild did last year when they brought Nyquist in because he was injured, the price went down, so they took a shot and said, let's see if he gets healthy. And I could see somebody doing that with Maroon. He's got some Stanley Cup playoff credibility.
And with Duham, like, unless you're offered something really significant, like, I don't see the real value in trading him. I also think, like, we're doing a player poll that you'll read pretty soon in The Athletic, and it's hilarious. And I'll just say that, remember when I did the player poll in 2020 and everybody was going after guys like Greenway and Ryan Donato? Well, Duham is the most popular person inside the room of people just making fun of with certain subjects. And to me, my always opinion is when teammates are going after you to that such a degree, it shows you how popular you really are in that room. I you know, for Bill Guerin to be such a locker room guy and Duham to be such an important piece in there and liked in there and all that stuff, I don't know if you just trade him for nothing just to open a door.
I don't think they would do that.
So like, it just makes no sense. You know, the more the merrier in terms of I've lost my train of thought there. More the merrier in terms of assets and things like that. All right, Donnie the Mouse says, how close do you think the Wild to be in the playoff race for Bill Guerin to not sell? Call me crazy, but I'm starting to believe in this team again, and I don't want them to sell off if they're within like 6 points of the wild card start. Like, again, the way I look at this is that the second they re-signed Foligno, Hartman, and Zuccarello, to me, the intrigue of the trade deadline left. So really, like, are you gonna we're talking about selling pieces for 5th round picks here? You know, maybe a guy like Fleury, who you can maybe get a conditional second, like a 3rd round pick, but maybe it moves to a second if the team goes to the Western Final. But trust me, Marc-Andre Fleury doesn't want to go anywhere. He wants to make the playoffs with this team. Now, if they fall out by March 8th, yeah, I think that they'll present him some options like Carolina or Colorado or whomever. But right now, like to me, Bill Guerin, he's not going to really be a buyer. And in terms of selling, like we're all worried about, like, or is he going to sell or buy? Well, it's not like anything that he does is going to like trigger some sort of rebuild. So I don't think this is as much intrigue as fans keep on making.
Yeah, I don't think so either. He isn't going to buy. It's maybe a role player, a supplemental piece, but he's not going to give away any significant future asset for a veteran or an expiring contract right now. If he buys, it's going to be a very small part. I
think his buying is Mason Shaw and Murat Huzinov. That's what I think his buying was, and Chisholm. I think that I just don't see him going out and making moves. Joey asks, with Urov re-signing in the KHL outside of Murat, who else from the organization could make the team next year and help provide some secondary scoring? All I could tell you is I've seen the reports on Urov and all that stuff. And by the way, this goes back to what I was saying. And when everybody in December was like, there was some deadline for Urov to sign, that was absolutely inaccurate. I talked to Urov yesterday, and Urov told me again that he has not re-signed in the KHL, that there's essentially a contract in waiting that he has negotiated, but it is not signed yet. And the Wild have also confirmed that. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but right now it is not a guarantee that he is 100% staying. Again, I'm expecting him to stay, but he told me again yesterday, this is not sources, him. He told me yesterday.
And we learned last week, you are not here to give us your opinion.
Exactly. He told me that he hasn't decided what he's going to do next summer yet. So, and in terms of like people acting like the reports the other day of him allegedly saying that he re-signed is news, this doesn't change anything. Bill Guerin has made it very clear that Urov, in his eyes, was going to be in Iowa anyway, or the KHL. So this doesn't suddenly open the door for other players to make the team. It was very unlikely that he was going to make the team anyway. Here's a good question. Jimmy says, what happens if there's a delayed penalty after a team enters the zone, scores, and then there's a successful coach's challenge for our size? Does the penalty still count even though the time it occurred hasn't happened yet due to the clock going back to the time of the offsides. Yes, if there is a delayed penalty, doesn't matter if the delayed penalty happened after the reversal of the offsides. The way I understand the rule is that they would still get a power play.
Yeah, a penalty can happen anytime, even if you do go backward in time.
Yeah. Johnson from Wisconsin goes, I know Mojo has great top 6 contract, but he's not playing up to that level. With 1 year left at $2 million, how likely would it be to move him at the deadline so we can keep the Deweys together? He is a full no move, so probably unlikely. But he is not. There are times where I love his game, Anthony, and there are times where it's just last night.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with him though that this is just the player that he is. He's not a in-your-face physical guy. He's a good skater that some nights he's going to make some plays and look like a guy that could be a more significant scorer than he's been. But if you look over his career, most years he's ended up in about the same spot. And he's pretty good with his stick, great feet, great skater, but he's just never going to be a game-changing type forward. He just isn't.
Yeah.
Never for lack of effort.
Yeah. Placed your bets 3. It says, with how well the fourth line's been playing, what do you predict happens when Foligno is healthy? Does that make guys like Dewey 1 and 2 easier to deal? Same with Maroon, or do they go back to pre-injury and roll with it? I don't think they're trading either Dewey. And yeah, when Foligno's healthy, he's going back to his spot. I mean, That's like, these guys have contracts. Jake Lucchini goes back to Iowa. That's just the way it works.
And look, Foligno's a different player than Connor Dewar or Brandon Duhaime. And I've argued that from the time way back to when he signed this extension and we started to wonder about where he fit on the team. He's a different player. He's a more valuable player. He's a better all-around player. He's a more skilled player than any of these fourth-line guys we're talking about. He makes more plays in a night than those guys make in a week. He's just a different guy.
And he's had a good year.
He's had a real good year.
Yeah, I get that fans are just like up in arms with the contract and stuff like that. But the reality is that he's had a good year. And he is still a very important piece of this organization. And it's an absolute warrior. Like, let's not forget that Pittsburgh game, until he got hurt, he was freaking unreal. And in Chicago, he was outstanding in Chicago. In a game where the top 6 absolutely didn't show up. Not only outstanding and fighting his brains off after being in the, in the Turks and Caicos and lounging around the sun for a week. He scores the winning goal. Joey asks, what do you think about Rossi's game the last few weeks? Do you think his lack of production is from him hitting the rookie wall or having either Freddie or Johansson on his wing?
I don't think his game had been great. I thought it was really good in Vegas. And I think it was almost as good in Arizona. He's been a little, not really, perimeter's not the right word for it, but he's been a little bit removed from the battle, I think, the last couple of weeks.
I agree.
I don't think it has anything to do with hitting a wall. I think it's just that his game's been off. But I thought he was really good in Vegas, and I thought it wasn't just that he scored the goal. I thought from the start in that game, he was more engaged. He was winning more battles for pucks. He was making plays, creating chances, and I think he carried that over into Arizona.
Yeah, it's funny because you said Chicago, he was their best analytical player, but I thought eye test he wasn't very good that night. But maybe
I thought he was good in that game, but I just thought it was the Pittsburgh game I didn't think was very good, and then the couple before the break, I just thought he looked like he had been a little off, but I thought his game looked good the last 2 on this trip.
A couple more questions. Andrew asks, what's the one trade the Wild didn't make that you would have turned out to be a great one? I mean, I don't know. There was talk of Dumba for Nylander. I don't know if how real that was, but Nylander would have been a great one. The other one is years and years and years ago, the Wild tried to sign Marian Hossa the year he signed his 1-year deal in Chicago or Detroit, and that would have been a heck of a signing. Let's see here. Here's one I thought was interesting because I didn't hear you say this. Tyler goes, from Mike specifically, can you explain why the Wild can't win on national TV? LaPanta pointed out the record is much better when only looking at the Bally's broadcasted games. Is this true, and does this prove that jinxes are real?
Well, it does not prove jinxes are real.
I think it does.
They're not.
It seems like
they did win their last national game, the Chicago game, I think that was their first national win of the year. I think they
was it really?
It was. They got blown out in Dallas. They got beat by Colorado at home, and there was one other one that they lost. It was the Philly game in Philly.
Yeah,
was one-sided. They had gotten blown out. They were 0-4, I think, and had gotten blown out in 3 of the 4. And then the Chicago game they won on national TV. So, yeah, they've been better on Bally's. Just keep every game on Bally's. I think that'd be the smart way to go.
Peter the Goat asked, did you like the All-Star jerseys? I actually liked them. What did you think?
They weren't bad.
I liked the nameplate on the bottom. I thought it looked pretty smooth.
Yeah, I didn't really have a strong opinion.
Wild Boys 59. Boy, maybe I should save this for next week. This could open a door. If you guys can say what's your thought going on the Russia situation, I feel bad for Kaprizov. Well, I wrote that story with Joe Smith and Rob Rossi the other day, and you would have thought that we committed treason. There is such a disconnect in my mind for this. Like, I just don't understand. Like, there are some psychos on Twitter and in the comments section that are acting like these Russians that are playing the NHL are the ones that decided to invade Ukraine. I don't understand. Like, I will never comprehend how it is up to Kirill Kaprizov or Nikita Kucherov or Andrei Vasilevsky or Svechnikov or whoever to give what their feelings are on the war, especially because this is not the United States. You don't know what repercussions could happen back when you go back there to your family. I don't understand. It's none of our business. Right now, because of what's going on over there, they have been taken out of international hockey. That was the purpose of our article, to talk to them about how they're not invited to be in this Four Nations Cup, how Nikita Kucherov and Vasilevsky and these guys might never, ever get to experience what Kirill Kaprizov did in the Olympics in South Korea. So I'm with you, Wild Boys 59. Like, I that is my thought on it, is like, I get why other countries do not want Russians to be part of international competition, but it is not Kirill Kaprizov's job to be asked his opinion of Putin or the war. Same it is not me up to going around the locker room and asking people about Donald Trump or Joe Biden or when we invade another country. Like, we don't ever ask Americans what they think of what's going on here. So why should Kirill Kaprizov have to give his opinion of what's going on? Yeah. Or condemn the war.
If he's disappointed that he doesn't get to play, that's fine.
That's what that's what the story is.
And
one of my colleagues in the Athletics said that Joe Smith, Rob Rossi, and I have the blood of Ukrainian children on our hands. Like, what the fuck? Okay, keep that in, Brandon. Yeah. It's at 102. Nobody will even hear it. Anyway, I mean, that's just my opinion. Don't you think that's a perfect way to end the podcast?
I think it's a perfect way to end.
Yeah, you just want to make dinner.
I do want to make dinner. I got some steaks. I got another tequila cocktail to whip up.
Yeah, there are some really good questions left, but we talked about dentistry and your incredible.
And we have a show next week.
Well, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks, as always, to all our Tuttle's restaurants for having us, Grain Belt, and as well. Again, February 21st is our next live show. That is going to be at Elsie's at 7 p.m. Come early for dinner. You'll absolutely love it. And again, thanks to our sponsors, and thanks for Anthony for having the Aquarius Home Services studio in his house tonight.
Anytime. You're welcome anytime.
Our sponsors are Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, plumbing, heating, electrical work, Royal Credit Union, Olivia Weight Control Centers, Bosch Law Firm, and Twill in the Edina Galleria. See you at Elsie's, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world